Oh, test, test, sound.
Sound,
Hermes says we have sound. And then he said, wait.
Yay. Okay, to recap,
He
hella
says,
chaos, hella issues. Internet was being stupid, had to reset everything all the way up to the modem through the provider. So it's been a good time. So thanks for waiting around for 50 minutes, anybody who's tuning in. It's probably going to be a short version of Chaos Curiosities, which, as you've noticed, is not Kristen tonight. It's me and Chad. Kristen wanted a night off. She is, I think, crushing cans in the garage right now, actually. We're also broadcasting
wow.
from my kitchen table because of the internet issues. We tried a couple different computers before we figured out where everything needed to get fixed. So, Chad and I are going to talk about world building and
Yeah.
story stuff and all that good jazz. So, give me a second to sip my beer. How about you start, Chad? Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you start to come up with ideas for stories and worlds?
Wow. Funny you should ask, Kat.
Funny, I should ask.
Funny. Man, yeah. It in a very real Chad way, it depends. Traditionally, I tend to be a person who starts from a big picture sort of space. I like to build from year zero out for some reason. Of old, like, oh, how did the world start? What was the mythology? And then kind of build into from there. Although usually I have like a seed, right? Like, this is the kind of world this is, or this is the stories we want to tell. And then how do we get from zero to there? Although I guess in retrospect, that hasn't really gotten me anywhere because none of that kind of stuff is really useful, which is one of the things I've really kind of learned lately. A lot of the people I follow in the RPG space are really like, oh yeah, like, player focused, or, really hammer in, like, if your players and characters aren't interfacing with a thing in your world, nobody gives a shit. Yeah, right? Like, your players don't care about your 10,000-year-old backstory to your world. Nobody cares about the Silmarillion. We're in the Lord of the Rings right now, right?
You got to get them engaged, and that's true of any story. You got to get them on board. You got to hook them in. So
yeah,
that's really dependent on the world you put together and stuff. And you're building one for City of Ashes. All my stories are novel type stories because I haven't written
right.
Well, actually, no, I take the back. The side quest everyone wanted for Viking Death Squad actually was completely written by me. So
yeah,
which I pulled that one like the day before we did the game. I was like, well, what happens if they roll Satan? And that's where I started. Was just that, and knowing I didn't want to do the same. What if they roll Satan bullshit I've seen everybody else do, which is fine. It's perfectly valid if that's what they want to do. But I was like, I want to do something else.
yeah. 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 Man, these gremlins really mess with my brain.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm kind of in a similar place now, like with City of Arches, which is, of course, it's there's a lot of work because it's a pre-written thing. So Mike Shea, Sly Flourish, he's done the work for for some of it. And then I've kind of expounded from it and then really leaned into the things that the players brought forth. I was like, hey, you guys can do whatever. Here's these kinds of things. And of course, then they're like, well, what about this? And then I'm like, I don't know. What am I feeling like today? That's kind of one of the other big things with me anyway, is like, what am I reading? What am I watching? What am I listening to? Like, I'm going to get inspiration from all of those things and kind of start and build out from there. like some of the my concepts for the three goddesses in the setting like ultimately came out of like Kristen world building for Artena
Oh,
when
with
she
the
was like
13.
building out her gods. I was like, oh, and then I was like, okay, that's cool. That's cool. I dig that.
Yeah,
And then
she.
I'm gonna like throw my own spin on some things and steal from everybody liberally. That's the number one rule of world building.
But most worlds, like whether it's like the fantasy books I'm reading or the stories that the one of the I think two, now there's a third one brewing in my head, story ideas. There's always gods in there of some kind. Like there's always like a higher power of some kind.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, it'd be interesting if someone wrote one where it's like, well, no, there's no higher power, there's nothing. You're just here and enjoy it, whatever. But typically speaking, especially in fantasy settings like that, there's always some kind of god. So I mean, nobody's really stealing from anybody. It's just it's something that
Yeah,
helps, gives you a mechanism.
yeah,
But
yeah.
you know, so I mean, having goddess, I mean, you didn't go balls deep like Kristen with her 13, which I thought was super impressive. Like that's a lot. I was like, damn. But we've got for Camp Gallowglass, we have 10 gods that are in it. Nothing is extensively written, but there's 10 that we pulled for our mythology, but they got pulled straight from actual mythology and then just kind of given like their little power spins to it. So, yeah.
I just sent you a message.
Yeah, I see that too, Steve. You get ideas from other places. I mean, I do too. You get inspiration from everywhere. So, and you can't help it. It's just kind of how it goes.
What in your experience doing non-game writing, um, how do you approach or how have you approached world building? Like how does that happen?
So I started. So let's see. I was showing you these earlier off camera when we were dealing with the internet. I've got like these notebooks that I wrote all these notes in, and like I'm not joking. It's like extensive, like highlights and cross references. So for the ones I've been writing on, I got this idea just popped in my head, and I was like, okay, cool. Now, where do we start with this? So I started with the main character, and then it was like, okay, she's got all of these things going on, and who else is here? So then it was like this character and this group of people. So I started writing all these outlines, and that's what I have is like this huge, like these notebooks and this huge Evernote file, and like 20 pages of this particular one I'm talking about right now written you know. So basically, I wrote all of these different outlines and had like references to connect them all together. So how does this connect this? This is this thing from here, you know. So it was a series, it started with just one little idea and a series of outlines. Um, and this one got extensive. It literally, I have the main storyline, which I actually need to write it down because I actually have the exact end and transition to the next phase of the story written in my head. I wrote it this morning in my head. So I need to
Nice.
do that. And then I need to go back in the original story. Like I was looking at it, I'm like, I stopped because I wasn't quite feeling it. So I need to kind of rework all of that based on all of my notes and stuff. But I have the main story and I'll pull up Evernote. I want to say in Evernote, I have three ancillary, like split off storylines for different parts of it too. And then I have another one that I don't have as many outlines for, but I wrote like the opening sequence of it, and it
Mm,
was like fucking intense. But it was like one of those ones where I wrote it, and it was like I was like upset. Like I was like it's a very like dramatic and hard thing to read. Like I was like kind of sick to my stomach when I read it, and when I was writing it, So most of the time it's like one seed idea, and I'll just start like I literally like have 30 pages of outlines at least, and write all these outlines and start connecting together and write a story. Because like I had the opening couple lines for the story that's got all the spin-off things, and the other one it was like this vision in my head of like the opening sequence and why is this whole sequence happening? What is the reason this person is going through this? Because it was basically a flashback, like a nightmare sequence of an event that happened previously that feeds into the greater story of like where this character is when they wake up and how they got there. You know, that's when
Sure.
like all the exposition and stuff starts to say like, this is how I got here, and this is kind of the things that happened when I got here, and this is why I'm here now because they're like out in space and things like that. So, you know, it varies for me to be honest. Like it's sometimes it's the vision in my head of what it is, and I start writing that down, or it's like this whole interconnected fucking story, like the one with all the outlines. It's like it's I've got these groups. They're like named like I know a bunch of Latin now because I have so many Latin names in this thing. Like I've been learning Latin just by doing this. But
Hmm.
here's the fucking thing. I am terrible at naming characters. I have three characters named in the story, and none of them are the main characters. I think she might actually have a name now. Actually, I was talking to Chris
Greg,
about this the other day.
Steve.
Yeah, let's see. Oh no, I did name her. I did. Okay,
Nice.
I did, and I'm not sure if I'm sold completely on the name, but I'm pretty sure I have named her. So, but this name happened. I want to say in the last like 6 months.
Sure.
So, you know, it so for me the process is kind of like as much as all over the place as the explanation was just now, you know, because it's sometimes
So, where do you like? Where did this start from?
which one did
Right.
I have?
Fair enough.
So the one that
I guess, yeah. Just
so
like the one that you have, like all the outlines for,
that was just
like what? How did that start?
it was just a random idea in my head, and it you know falls in line with some of the other supernatural fiction that's out there, you know, because that's where you know I read a lot of that, um, and just an idea came in my head because you know instead of like someone building up to be the Mary Sue, they start out as they already have everything, you know, but now what, you
Hmm.
know, and it kind of goes from there, and then goes into like
Sure.
a whole series of things, and then the other one I didn't realize at the time, like when I wrote the nightmare sequence, that was real upsetting and whatnot. I didn't realize at the time, but it's based on something that happened to me when I was in my 20s, and it has always been something that's very hard for me. It's one of those. I think I was working out the trauma of the whole scenario by writing this,
Hmm.
and it turned into a whole thing. But it's like really fucking intense. So I'll explain to you more off camera because it's so like not completely like I have the outlines for that too now, but I have the whole sequence, and I don't want to give anything away for either because there's so like so much I still yet to do before I even like try to put them into the world, you know.
Hmm.
But you know, now that Kristen and I did the game, I'm like, now I know that I can do this kind of thing to completion. Yeah, it was only like 9 pages, but it was the big thing that shows me I can still do this.
Yeah.
So yes, her name is okay. Her name is Steve. See, I didn't see that.
Her name is Steve. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Then you
Okay.
got to put you put your game designer pants on one page at a time, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I wrote like in a short matter of time. I wrote the first 20 pages of the story with all the outlines, and the
Hmm.
nightmare sequence I wrote in probably like 20 minutes. Like,
Sure.
you know, it didn't take long. It's like 3 or 4 pages. You know, so and then like there's like some of the after part too. So like I even wrote into I think the first like bit of like waking up from the nightmare and explaining like the setting of where she was and how she kind of got there. So there's a bunch of that in there already. So I might even have more than that. I might even have like 10 pages or so into that, you know, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when, you know, I stop and I look at it, it's like I was writing the one with all the outlines. I started that the year before COVID.
Hmm.
And most of the 20 pages I wrote was when I was traveling.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I was, so I mean, it's one of those things like, okay, I know I can do it now. So it's, but it's interesting how it just kind of pops in there. Like I can see it, like it's not um, just like some random like one liner. It's like as soon as something strikes me, even if it is like just a kind of an idea, suddenly I can visualize the whole thing.
Right.
So like the opening sequence from from the story with all the outlines, the supernatural one. Um, I saw the whole opening sequence all the way up to like the end of the first chapter. So um, and I can picture it in my head very clearly how it all goes down, all the situations, because it's like it transitions from like two different locations and just like the
Mm.
whole like everything. So I can just even like visualize the whole scene,
Yeah.
the same thing with the nightmare sequence part too. I can visualize it. So it's like my brain is very like clearly like very vivid. My imagination is very vivid. I can picture like things like you're watching it on a TV kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So,
Hell yeah. Let's take some questions. We have some questions here in
oh,
the
we do.
chat.
We do.
Yeah. Um, I'm watching some chat. Let's see. We kind of asked that. So Skag originally, of course, asked, do you start small and work out, or big and work in? And I think we kind of answered that.
Well, yeah, I start, well, yeah, no, I start big. I start
Yeah.
big because both ideas, especially the one with the nightmare sequence, that one's fucking huge. That's like space
Yeah.
opera huge. So,
Sure.
like the whole overarching idea of it. So that one started big. The supernatural one actually started small because it just started
Mm.
with one single idea and I built out.
Hmm.
So I've worked both ways actually.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends on the story too for me.
Hmm.
Like some people work small and start out or vice versa, but for me it depends on what the story is. You know,
Hmm.
sometimes I may see, I didn't necessarily see the end point. I don't necessarily see the end point with either. Well, the supernatural one now I have a natural end point for the first part, the first story.
Arc.
But
Yeah.
the space one, I haven't quite gotten to an endpoint yet. So I'm still working my way out, but I have the whole working idea of the whole big idea of what is happening in this world and why the things are happening and the larger part of the story of that. Like
Hmm.
that makes it big.
Yeah.
It's this whole huge universe kind of thing. So it just really depends on what the story is and what it strikes me. So
Yeah.
the other one that's bringing in my head covers two different worlds, like
Mm.
multiverse kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so that one's not even like it's sort of formed, but not. So, but that one's like kind of brewing back there. So
Yeah.
that'll take a little while. I'm planning on revisiting the supernatural one first because that one is the most formed one, and that's the one I've been really wanting to dig back into and like rework. Yeah,
Hmm.
but I used that when I did Viking Death Squad. I used a combination of that and my management skills from wrangling people in a big hospital
Yeah.
where you have to anticipate shenanigans. So I should send it to you. You should see what I wrote for Viking Death Squad because the way I wrote it was a fucking script, basically.
Hell yeah.
So I had the original sequence, which was pulled straight from the book with just a few like changes here and there. And then I was like, well, what if they roll 666? And that's where and that was the same thing. It was like just a one liner. I was like, I don't know what I'm
Yeah.
going to do for this. And then I was like, we're not going to do the normal thing that everybody does where Satan like does one little fucked up thing, goes away. Nope, they went on a mission for Satan.
Hell
So,
yeah.
you know, I'm glad you had fun, Skag. That makes me feel really, really good that you guys had a good time. It was so fucking ridiculous, especially like the actual like the brass ring they had to grab at the end, the brown bear.
Yeah. It was fun to watch. And yeah, I guess I would mirror that. Traditionally, like I said, I start big, um, and I like to start small now. Work out from player character, work out from the characters or from like the town that they're in. But at the same time, it depends. Like, especially like if I'm running with like a pre-written concept, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like um, let me like I still sometime in the future, like I want to run a game set in Kamigawa, which is the cyberpunk. Well, the latest Magic the Gathering setting or set that came out for Kamigawa is this. It's like Japanese fantasy, but also cyberpunk. And I really want to put together a game for that. But it's like the things that have been done in it kind of speak to a certain level of of uh, of the building that you like me as the DM would do on top of it, which might have a more big focus than a small focus, just because of that's what the setting wants you to do. You know, it'd be like you're not going to run fucking rinky dink shenanigans in like the Game of Thrones setting, right?
No.
You know, you're gonna run big stuff. It's gonna be big, and the
You mean you're not
building
going to
that
do
you
this
do.
for dinner like we did on Friday and Saturday?
Right. Yeah. No. Nobody cares about what Tyrion Lannister is eating for dinner. You know,
You know, the
because
internet
who is he
spoiled
killing at dinner and why?
I honestly like the internet spoiled all the violent stuff, the sex stuff for Game of Thrones, so I haven't actually sat down and watched it because I pretty much know what all happened. I would actually sit
Yeah.
there and watch Tyrion go get dinner and just chill out with his friends and talk shit because
Sure.
that's like, you know, at that point it's so different from everything I've heard about it. It'd be entertaining.
Yeah.
You know,
Um.
I got a couple of good ones actually. I was looking.
Yeah.
So, what parts of media have inspired your world? So, my world's, you know, it's, you know, one supernatural, you know, tropes, vampires, werewolves, things like that. And then the other one is space. It's like a space opera. So it's, you know,
Mm,
spaceships and aliens and, you know, big, powerful, you know, alien, you know, race, you know, big, powerful alien, human alien race that, you know, is being shitty kind of things, you know,
sure.
depression and all that, you know. So it's kind of those things, you know. It's a combination of things that I've read and watched over the years that really, you know, kind of inform my tastes and, you know, or kind of the worlds that I wanted to write in when these stories popped into my head. Um, you know, so it's really just it's like a melting pot of things at this point. Like I've read so many books. I mean, there was one summer I read this I was really not having a good summer. I didn't really see or talk to anybody. I read like 50 books, like
Wow.
sci-fi, mostly sci-fi and some fantasy books, just like from like May to like September. That's all I did was work my shitty job at Starbucks.
Yeah.
It actually wasn't that shitty, just didn't pay well. Um, and I worked with cool people, and the job actually isn't that bad as long as you're like working the bar itself. Um, and read books. That's all I did, you know. So I mean, but I've read so many books over my lifetime, and you know, I haven't watched as much media as most people. Like I watch very little TV. Like the list of things I have seen is very short. Like
Mm.
it's easier to ask, you know, what I have seen than what I have, you know, or what I haven't seen. I don't know. The list of what I haven't seen is longer.
Right. Right. Right.
It's everything's kind of a scrambled salad after all the tech issues this season.
Yeah.
But you know, so books, I think sci-fi books and sci-fi, you know, fantasy books are some of the bigger influences, you know, those worlds,
Yeah.
you know. So I think the one that's brewing in my head will combine some fantasy and some modern fantasy. So it's like it's going to be a kind of a mashup of the several things,
Mm.
um, as opposed to just like one. And both the other two, like one is set in the future, the space one is set in the future. It's still it's us, but it's set in the future. And then the other one is in the now, but it's supernatural kind of thing. So those are the things that it's not even really. I guess it's just books mostly. Like there's some media. 'Cause, I mean, you know, I've watched Star Wars and Star Trek extensively. So I mean that those tropes are going to be in the back of my mind. But that's me and my word salad. What about you?
Um, yeah, I mean, a lot of, I guess I don't really get as inspired by like movies and TV as much.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that is the like level of interaction I have with the content. Um, I get pretty inspired by books, by things I've read, and a lot of it's like, because especially like now I read a lot of anything I read or listen to on Audible or whatever, I like dissect, right, from a very like designy perspective, like, oh, like, okay, so what you just said in 20 pages really, okay, that kind of alludes to this thing. That's a really cool way that humans and gods interact. Like, I like that. But for the most, like a lot of my inspiration is art, like cool images, or like vistas, whether real or fantasy, like, oh, that's a cool place. I wonder who lives there. And what does that say about the people and who interacts there and that kind of stuff?
See, like
Is a
my brain works like if I see like cool places or like I see like a cool like art or architecture, especially architecture or like homes or things like that. I'm not looking at it like, oh, who lives there from a story standpoint. I'm like, how can I remodel it or make it cooler? Because I build
mm-hmm.
things in my mind too.
Yeah,
So that I don't get to inform so much by that as I guess stories themselves. I
sure.
get really grossly involved with the characters. Like it's like I like very like get very attached to them. Like I'm reading the second book in a series right now, and for a minute there, I was so attached to these two people together as a couple, because they were so like they're so like well written together, and they were look for a minute it looked like things were going to go very sideways, and I was like, oh, okay, no, now they're fine, but now they're all in trouble, and I get so invested in stories, so that's why I
Yeah.
those more.
So Christian has a great question,
Okay.
which is kind of about what you were just speaking to. But he says, what's the most important building block for you? Themes, geography, culture and races, storyline, history, pantheon, and so forth. What really helps kind of cement the world in your mind as you're
Uh, that
making it.
That's really fucking good, Christian. Um, well, you start with that one
Sure.
because mine's gonna be word salad. I
Um,
have a couple of things for that. So
yeah, I'm gonna give a two-part answer.
okay,
Historically, I would have said kind of history and mythology. Um, uh, of old, I have been really interested in the things in, because it's fantasy. Like a lot of my stuff is things that I worry about as fantasy, right? So, like, what does the mythology of a place say about the reality of a place, especially when it's a fantasy world where the mythology can equally be the reality? So God's kind of pantheon history, but I think now it's really the relations of things is the sort of thing that kind of cements things for me. Like these these people, these organizations, these races, these cultures, whatever, how they interact and get along, and then based on those interactions, I kind of build outward, kind of from there, like, because those are in the last few years, those are the things that have, I think, just to me and on a personal level, the relations of things have really been a prevalent concept for me as a person, and thus it has kind of grown out into my creative process,
cool.
if that makes sense.
It does make sense. It does make sense. So mine is mine is again pretty dependent on which thing I'm working on. So um, like when I wrote the Viking Death Squad one, that one was literally just the line of what happens if they roll Satan. So it was really just the idea
Hmm.
and built from there. For these stories, again, it was different. Like the space one, the nightmare sequence just popped into my head one day. I was like, I have ADHD, so I'll be working on something, I'll be doing something. Suddenly, I just space the fuck out. I go, I don't know where I go sometimes, and then I'm just there, and I was spacing out, and the whole sequence just popped in my head, like you know, and I was like, well, why? What happened here? Because it was just that whole sequence,
Hmm.
and it was really dramatic, and I was really like shaken by like even thinking about it. I was like, this is a story. That's what this is right now. And then the reason kind of developed from there. This is why this happened. This is what you know this sequence and is what's going to drive the character to find out eventually why these other things happened, why they were essentially taken from one place and taken to another place, and the whole sequence of events. So for me, for that one, it was that sequence gave me the seed for the whole story, the whole um, theme of the story, and the reason. It gave me the reason for
Yeah.
the story existing. The supernatural one was again just an idea, but then I built this whole outline and tied them all together. And as I was tying all of these little parts and pieces together, it built this whole world. Like it's a very fully formed world. There's like various locations throughout the world. There's a subterranean location. There's like different groups that operate that you don't see, like your everyday person doesn't see. Like there's all sorts of layers to it. So as I was starting to make these different pieces in the outline, they just tied together to form a whole world. So both really kind of started from two different ideas. Like one was an idea in my head, and one was like a whole sequence.
Yeah.
And so it was basically as I built those things, it was one was the storyline. So the supernatural one was definitely the storyline, like where is this going and why, and the other one was an overarching like just idea. It's not necessarily a storyline because I haven't like completely like lined out and telegraphed it, but so I don't know if it falls into a theme so much as just it was the reason for being there, kind of thing.
Hmm.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, the connective tissue. Yes, you're right, Christian. That is really important. And the supernatural one has a lot of it. There are a lot of ties everywhere.
Let's see. What else? What else?
Right. There's
Do you cast your characters in your head?
so yeah, some of them.
Yeah.
So for Viking Death Squad, I basically when I used to go to Rocky Horror, I was the I would sometimes wear a suit. So it was just the suit coat. I was much younger too, so I don't think I would do this now. It was just a suit coat, pants, and just the bra. That's it. That's all I would wear. And it was like a pinstripe kind of suit kind of thing. And so basically, when I pictured Lucifer, it was that. She was in that suit. She had black hair and just all slicked back. She was very like, you know, like was very simple but attractive and you know clearly lethal. So
Hmm.
and other characters like the space opera one, especially that whole nightmare sequence, it was very autobiographical. So that character's definitely got a lot of me in it. The other character, she's a lot of my attitude, but there's other things in her that I know aren't really me, but I can see like little pieces. And then other characters end up getting cast from people I've met, people I know, things like that, you know. So you somewhere in one of my stories, those of you that I know throughout the course of my life may appear in there in some way, shape, or form, even if you don't know it. So, um, so I do cast people, so to speak, to answer that question. I do,
Yeah.
and and it's like any writer. Most any writer, somewhere in their story, they're gonna put themselves in that fucking story. It may not be the main character, or it may be. or maybe pieces of them spread out, but they're always going to be in the story. So you got to expect that. But otherwise, I usually cast from my life, I guess.
Sure. Oh man, I don't know if I do or not. I cast pieces of characters, I'll say, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this NPC is like this, and it's like, you know, has fucking, god damn it. I can't, it was Sam said like, oh, he's got like the face of Sam Elliott, you know, but then he talks like, I don't know,
Gilbert
Chris
Godfrey.
Christopherson. I'm just gonna throw names out. I can't, you know, but like
It
you
would be
know,
better
or
if it was
I'll like
Gilbert Godfrey. That would be so fucked up.
yeah. Well, I think we used to do that a lot back in the day, where you know before playing on the internet, um, you know we'd like you just go scour like Google or whatever like for all these actors. And we'd be like, oh, here's this guy, and he looks like Russell Wong or somebody. I don't know if anyone knows who Russell Wong is out there, but you
I
know,
know the
or
name. I probably know the
different. The only reason he comes to my head is because I randomly saw a thing about New Jack City, and he was in New Jack City.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But you know, like we used to use pictures for NPCs or even player characters, like we were back in the day. And I find I do that less. I kind of do that less now, and I suppose now that I'm most of my game is games is playing or running on Twitch, you know, so I'm really leery to do that. Like I want to, and be like, here, look at this is the art. No, I can't share this art. This is a person who would get mad.
Yeah, that's on the internet. Yeah, you have to be
and
careful.
and I guess sometimes I have ideas. I have ideas sometimes for characters, but I know like the game I'm running right now, like at the threshold, like man, I'm gonna be honest. Most of those NPCs, if it's not in the original PDF document I have for it, I'm making it up on the spot, probably.
That's
90% of the time, you know.
I mean, that's
like,
completely valid. Like, you don't necessarily have to have them all like well advanced. If you have an
instant,
idea,
instant casting.
You'll do, yeah. You know,
Yep.
then sometimes that's all you can do. I can't imagine as I run more games that I'm gonna have everything as telegraphed out as I did for Viking Death Squad.
Right.
Or even when I wrote that, I wrote in like my little scripting like allow for RP, allow for fucking shenanigans, something's gonna go sideways right here. I just fucking know it,
Yeah.
like I literally wrote that into the script to remind myself to give myself the space to let them fuck it up because
Breathe.
that's what happens. You have to
Yeah.
accept the human element because you're essentially letting, it's not like a play where everything is scripted out and they have to word for word repeat it. It's improv. So you don't know what they're necessarily going to do. So I tried to like leave it open as best I could, but I know at some point they're gonna be like, you know, I'm gonna have them because I'm doing the My Little Pony one shot in October, and I know it's gonna be like, well, we want to take our little pony asses over here to this tavern. Oh, but look, that door is glowing. This tavern over here. I want to see what happens if I drink whiskey as a horse. All right. Well, now we got to have a bartender and a piano player and some sort of poker player that's going to try and murder them.
Yeah. The
So,
poker player, the piano player needs to be a zebra.
Oh, okay, a zebra, just for you.
I don't know.
I don't know. It's supposed to be My Little Pony meets Halloween Town because it's around.
Yeah.
Because I think I want to do
Nice.
the week that the games are off the air and
Yep.
go in there because we have like 1 week where I have one game off the air. I don't know. I was looking at the schedule today because
I think I'm off the air 2 weeks.
All season finales happen in October, but they're weirdly staggered, and I'm not quite sure how I ended up there because I swore I had them all timed together. So I need to go back and look at the scheduling and kind of tool it a little bit because somebody wants to run a mini campaign of Borderlands. Well, we're on breaks, and I'm super excited for that. So, because I've been wanting to play it since they told me about it. So we're finally going to put it together and do the thing. So
Yeah.
I will be looking at schedule. So that'll be coming too. But so we've got some stuff coming up. But I know I'm going to do that, and then Blade Runner. I want to run that, and that's going to be intense. So that's going to be a whole different, kind of thing. But that kind of writing, that kind of setting speaks more to the things that I write, because a lot
Hmm.
of this stuff that I write, some of it's gonna get real heavy and dark, and that's some more dark subject there that fits in more with the things that I read and write and watch, stuff like that. That's why I like cyberpunk, because
Yeah.
it fits in with like the things that I read and watch and whatever. Not to say that I wouldn't like love to jump into some of the other games, but
So you're a gritty writer.
yeah, yeah, it's not just my sparkling personality, it's all around. It's my whole
Yeah.
life. My coffee is black, my beers are black, my soul is black, so it's all reflective.
So yeah, sucks in the light. I think, yeah, I feel like I script out more doing a one shot than I do in a campaign right
Yeah.
now. Anyway,
Well, you
like,
kind of have to though, because the one shots you have to be able to fit everything you want to do into that 2 to 3 hour span,
yeah,
and that's what I did Viking Death Squad in 2 hours, like a little over 2 hours. So for the whole ass thing. So I mean, I scripted it because I knew I was going to have to keep it within a certain time span, because nobody's going to sit for 4 hours and watch all that.
hmm,
So I can see that, why you would be a little bit more scripty with the one shots.
yeah, and you want it to be like, whether it's, even if it's not like a stream product, right? Like if it's just, you know me and the boys or whatever, right? You still want it to be a little more succinct. I want to encapsulate the experience of this one shot into as a one shot. Whereas, like, if you run a one shot like a normal TTRPG session, it's going to be like,
Yeah, it's gonna.
oh yeah, we spent 45 minutes, pissing on the bar for no reason.
Yeah, no, you gotta run it. You gotta
Yay!
move it at yes. You gotta have some pacing there. This is why,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
when you're doing a long term campaign, you can go for fucking dinner at the food court in a prison island. Oh yeah,
yeah,
it was. I mean, there was stuff that happened that did help propel the story along and made my character feel like an asshole, because she pretty much got called the fuck out by Patches, because my character Obscura has been very, for those of you who haven't watched it, or haven't, or missed it last week, my character Obscura is very suspicious of Patches and why she's able to get cell phone signal for a dating app when none of us can get cell phone signal where we are. And she's like, last session, she's like, "You never asked." And I'm like,
mhm.
"Fuck, you're right. I did not ask. I just kind of gave you the fucking side eye the whole time. I'm sorry." And my character totally deserved it. She's so mistrustful of everybody that just flat out asking didn't occur to her. And then she's
Yeah.
like, shit.
So here's a question. How do you where do you start from world building a character?
Like my character?
Yeah, yeah. Like, what's your process? Because world character building is world building too, right?
It is.
What's your process there?
So some of them, I would pick out, like, do I want to be A, B, or C? So, like, with Obscura, I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to be a net runner or a solo.
Mhm.
And then Tim came to me with the idea of, hey, do you want to be a brother sister duo? I was like, okay. And he had all these ideas for what, our family and what happened. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to be a net runner. and then it just kind of tumbled from there. Like his idea, I piggybacked off of his idea with some of that stuff. I'm gonna be quite blatant about it. He came up with the whole like, what happened to our family and stuff, and how we're out there doing what we're doing now. And I was like, okay, so it actually was, and I've already said in the game, this all went down, like the bad things went down on my character's 18th birthday, so at her birthday party. So, I was, and that I came with that. I was like, okay, so this is the bad thing that happened because of something, someone you were with, so, but it happened here, here, and there, and this is how it happened for Obscure, and this is like what she's kind of dealing with. I form the character as she's angry, wants her revenge, and is, absolutely 100% is cognizant of the fact that she doesn't know what's going to be after that. She's in her
Mhm.
20s. If she lives through this, she's going to have the rest of her life ahead of her. Has no idea. She is just so hyper focused on this and taking care of her brother, making sure he lives through it, that that's her driving force right now. Is just tying this all up and ending this bullshit with this person that hurt them, you know. So, and that was what I figured. She'll do all of the other things around it that need to be done, the things they've been roped into, or jobs to make more money, to get the information she needs to meet her goal. But she's, a character who is very like laser focused on that goal, but is also very aware of that fact. Like she's not blind to the fact that she's gonna have to figure out what's next afterwards. Like a lot of these
Mhm.
characters get, where they forget there's a whole life around them and a whole world around them. She's aware, so so I kind of built it like that. She's angry, and wants nothing more than to finish this and protect her, by all accounts, idiot brother, which is legit. I'm not just being mean. His intelligence is literally 2. So, he knows one big word, and the rest of his intelligence is in everything else. you know, but then with my one shot characters, it's like I can't fully form the character until I name them, and it's really funny because like then once I name them, like they have a whole ass story. You may not hear the
Mm,
whole ass story, but I have it in my head, so I know
sure.
how they are like in personality, and what makes them get up in the morning. What is it they do? So it's like figure out what their role, their class, their job, whatever it is they do, and then I have to name them, and then I fill everything else in the middle.
And then it clicks.
It clicks, yeah. So like one shots, I think, are different than the long term, and I
Okay.
didn't realize this until we actually started this long term game, because the last long term games were just me like relearning how to play fucking D&D, and those are our
Yeah.
home games. So the one shots, I'm discovering this dynamic as I'm doing this now, is how I approach the different. It's the type of play you're doing too, like the length. And the problem is I get attached to all my characters. Like I'm super attached to all of my characters, so I hate that some of them may never play again. You know,
Hmm.
because I really love them. I mentioned it to Kristen again that we're supposed to eventually swing back around to Immortal, because she left that on a cliffhanger, which is good
Right.
because I really like that character, and I'd like to like go back and relook at her now from the perspective of having played so much more since then. And then and but my other one shot characters, I may never play them again, and I'm sad. Like
Yeah.
that's my problem with every story, is like I get so attached to my characters, mine or the ones in the stories I'm reading. So like I finished a book series a couple months ago. It took me a while to pick up another book series. It ends up being from the same author, and the stories are apparently going to eventually tie together. But it took me a while to even pick up those because I was so attached to those characters. I'm like,
Mm.
you ever finish a book series and you're like, you're so into it, and there's no more of them to read. You love those characters. You just stop for a while because you can't. Everything else just doesn't work.
No.
Okay, well then I'm the fucking weirdo.
No, it's not weird. I know. I mean, I know I know what you're feeling, right? I definitely, I definitely have books that I've read, say like big series, and you have all these characters, and you're like, can we just get back to Logan Nine Fingers? Like, can we get back to this one character? Like, I don't give a shit about everybody else. Um, But yeah,
Well,
Skag.
how do you build
Oh,
your characters?
my characters. So I like to start generally. Um, although I don't know that I ever really ask myself this question specifically, but um, I usually start from a sort of position of in the action movie about this game, what is my character doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like is he the punch kick guy? Is he the shoot guns guy? You know, and this is you know, characters are definitely a part where I tend to pull from more media.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely get more ideas from different movies or TV shows or books or music or whatever, comic books, right? Um, yeah, but for me, it's usually like I usually have like some some scene like, oh, I got to make a character for this, and then some scene will happen in my head of somebody doing something, and I build out from that action of what's happening. um I guess, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of, that's kind of, and then I may build out a lot of backstory, I may not build out a lot of backstory. I'm really, I really like to be a pretty what's the word for emergent, kind of kind of builder in a lot of ways. Like I don't usually, that's not to say it's not never, but I don't usually have like a big backstory. I have like some ideas, and then as we go, I kind of build out like concepts of the character from there. And sometimes it's just like in, say, in D&D, it's just like a, what can I do with a weird class build that I like? Like one of my characters in the Saltmarsh game was a dwarven monk who wasn't dex based, because that's not a, like, because that's a, should be a viable, interesting thing.
I mean, that's
Oh, that's good.
that
Um,
that seems like it would be quite difficult. How did that work out for you?
fantastic. Um, yeah, he was a beast. And I got lucky with a decent set of stats, of course. But it was definitely like, it's not optimal, right? In it, so there are, so it wasn't optimal, but because of different, like in D&D, because of different feats that you can take that I took, um, I'm able to make things work, right? Because that's part of like the interesting part of D&D for me, kind of always has been like, how do we make this work? Like I started playing D&D in second edition or first edition, you know, when a fighter didn't have a million cool abilities other than pick a weapon, hit somebody with it. So for me, like back in the day, it was always like, okay, I'm playing a fighter as an example, you know, I'm gonna let me pick a weapon, and then how do I go from there? And like, okay, how do I use this weapon? How do we characterize the action with this thing? And it worked really, like mechanically, it worked okay for that character whose name I can't remember right now. Michael will tell me. The dwarven monk guy. Wow, Erin Coldbiter. Yeah, but yeah, mechanically it worked out less optimally than if I'd have stuck everything in Dex, but it was, I like that the challenge of problem solving with a system. But Skag has a great question I want to get to if we have
Yeah.
time. It's almost Oh wow.
We ended up
Um,
talking for a lot longer than I thought we would after all the trouble.
yeah.
It's fine. Go ahead.
So Skag asks, how do you determine who and what the big bad is and what their end game is?
Well, I mean,
Do your narrative stories so far have a big are they the
yes.
types of stories that have a big bad?
Yes. So one has so the supernatural one has a big bad who's doing something pretty fucked up, but that actually isn't the like taking care of this big bad sets up for something way fucking worse, like larger scope.
Okay.
Which is another like I think it's going to be multiple big bads at that point. So there
Mm.
is for that story. The space one has a big bad like it essentially could equate it to like the empire kind of thing. So it's like more of a larger governmental body. I haven't like decided on a figurehead for that one or anything yet, or who's going to be like the main points of that are going to be the actual antagonist part of it. It's just overarching right now. It's just a large governmental body. So there are bad. There is the bad there that they have to fight and feed. You know, and both there's going to be some grays and there's going to be some of that or some hidden bads. But um, yeah, they both have one that they have to end up.
Okay.
You know, that is part of the end game scenario. I mean, that's most of these stories. I, I feel like a lot of these stories when they try to like undermine that trope, of having a big bad goofy take that goal out of the equation, a lot of them fall flat. I feel like,
Mm.
you know, um,
Thank you.
but I feel like that's part of the whole point of these stories. Is like you start with okay, this is this person or this group here, and this thing happened, and it's the catalyst for this whole story. And that whole point of the whole story is stopping something bad from happening, or stopping this shitty person, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's always got to be a goal or a reason to be continuing through the story and all the things that happen to this person. I don't usually read stories to read a day in the life of asshole number 45. Like, I don't, if I want to have that story, I can just look at my fucking day because I'm asshole number 45, you know? So, and it's the same thing, with they're just certain stories where it's like, if I want that story, I can just look around real life because I've got that, that's why
Yeah.
I don't by and large get into like the current type of horror right now. If I want blood and guts, I'll go back to working trauma, or I don't like political thrillers like that aren't like with the sci. There's politics and like your sci-fi and your fantasy stuff, but when you take it and you make it like real world type stories, like about you know
It's a
the
little too real.
it just it's like if I want that stuff, I'm just gonna go watch the news or
Right.
go on the internet. It's like I want to be taken out of reality, but part of that is having that goal of having something to fight,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and something to the good versus evil. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That is the trope that drives most stories, and I feel like you have to have that. So mine always do, you know. Now, I don't think my Baking Death Squad necessarily had a big bad like that one shot didn't. They just had a goal. They had two different
Yeah.
goals. One of two they had to meet. So there was no real big bad because even the creatures they fought at the end to get the bear, that wasn't really super bad. I didn't make it super hard because I didn't want to have an hour-long battle. None of the creatures were super difficult. I just wanted to tell a story and have a few fights and have a good time.
Yeah.
So I think that's the closest one I've ever like written or designed that wasn't like here's the biggest ugliest thing at the end that you have to fight to win. But these ones in my notebooks and things, those have definite things. So what about you? Because that's
I'm
a
a
good question.
I'm a pretty simple guy, I I stick to the standards, world domination, seeking divinity, ultimate power, you know.
I think this one, the first big bad in my supernatural story, wants to kill everybody. I think
Yeah,
it's like, domination and lots of fucking murder. So
yeah, yeah. I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. And realistically, like if I think back to like a lot of the books I've read in the last 10 years, like any big bad in a fantasy book, not all big bads, but most big bads in fantasy books boil down to, right, like world domination. I want to become a god.
that's the book.
You
That's
know,
the book
I
I'm reading right
I
now.
don't like your face and I'm gonna kill everybody who looks like you. I'm Voldemort.
Yeah,
And I like that. It's simple. Everybody knows where they stand. It's easy to telegraph because with TTR, with games like we want, like as writers, as designers, like, man, we want to be clever. I want to be clever. Don't be clever. Being clever is dumb. It's the worst thing you can do. It's the easiest way to ruin a game experience.
so
Slap your big bat on the table. Your players know what's up. It's fine.
you can be clever while still going with the trope. You get just little things. It's
Yeah.
little things. It's little twists. It's not like
Well,
the
I,
big
I
bad
think,
is actually a really nice person and wants to save the world, and everything's actually fine. We're good. Nothing like that. You're not really like
right.
reinventing the wheel here. You're just like you're adding little things along the way for flavor and color and depth.
I guess when I use in this context, when I use the term being clever, I'm thinking like, oh no, like the big, like M. Night Shyamalan level, like,
Oh yeah, nobody's got time for that
like
shit.
everybody wants to do that stuff. Like, wait a minute, what if the D&D game we're playing 20 sessions in is actually the Matrix and you're these other characters now, but you don't tell anybody about that. And your players will look at you like you are the worst person.
That would work if your players were in on it and you were transitioning to a different game system for
Yeah.
your next season. Like if you
Because
came
then
in
it's
and you
not
told
being
your
clever.
well, it is, but it's clever when to the audience, not to the
Right.
players.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
start with the players. You're like, hey, we're gonna do a couple seasons of stuff together, but this is what I want to do. So have this, and then towards the end, we'll make sure these characters are built out to roll into that.
Yeah.
So that's as long as your players are in on it, the audience watching, like in a streaming format, like in a home game format. No, don't do that shit. That's not cool. But in a streaming format, when you're presenting the story to an audience, that can be cool as long as
Yeah.
you handle it right and you're not springing it on the players at the same time you're springing it on them. It makes sense.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. That's 100%. That's a great, but you can be clever with the audience unless the only audience is your players.
Yes.
And then they have to be in on it because
You will miss
some,
them if you
yeah. But I'm a simple guy,
I think I give a complicated answer when really the ultimate answer is yes, I have big bads too, but
yeah.
mine are like just different flavors and how I got to them. I have multiple, it's there's a whole lot of stuff that I have. Like there's a whole wealth of a couple different
Yeah.
books. So it's there's a lot there. So when you ask a question, I'm like, oh, like if you'd asked me these same questions like 2, 3 years ago, it would have been much different answers. It'd probably been a lot simpler because I didn't have all of this done. This stuff was just starting to be built as opposed to now where I've got all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it gets more complicated when you add the story because like this story has so many like layers to it. So,
And you add, if it's a game, then you're adding like all of the players.
right.
Like I'll tell you what, the big bads in At the Threshold, it's all It's but well, ultimately the players' backstories created them. Like
Oh yeah,
there's there's
ours did too
there's
as a
some big
cyberpunk.
bads in that game that we'll interact with probably, but all the real big bads are
They made, yeah.
100% the characters, the
Well,
players,
that's what Tim and
had
I
a
did.
hand in.
That's what Tim and I did on Cyberpunk. Our
Yeah.
backstory ends up like is a big underlying part of this season, as it were. I don't know if it's like just the first, we've already gone through, already had our season break. So the season, it's that is underlying. We have one person who's already guest starred as one of those two characters, and we have our other guest star for the other one of those two characters coming on, not this Friday, but next Friday, I think, a week or two from now, on the 19th. But yeah, so we came up with a story, and suddenly it's like, oh, that's actually a much larger part of the plot than
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I can see how your players, just in terms of building the story, would inform what you're going to do as it is. Like,
Yeah.
you know, um, we did another one shot uh, a while back, very early on in our channel run, and um, Christian and I went off in like some massive RP in the chat on Discord at like for like an hour and a half or some shit. I don't know. It was a while. It was well before Kristen got up. She comes downstairs to get coffee, and I'm like, "Well, I was on my bullshit this morning, so sorry when you log into Discord." But it gave her a starting point.
Yeah.
She was going to start it somewhere else, and maybe with the trope of in a bar or something. And we started out in a convent instead because that's where Christian and I just went off on this convent thing, and I made him wear a nun's habit and all this shit. It was fucking great. But and I have totally been in on that action and seen that in action in a couple
Yeah.
of instances now. And that's sometimes I think is really kind of helpful in a way because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
like it gives you direction that you didn't know that you wanted, but at the same time, like, and I'm saying this in an idealistic way because I haven't had that as a DM yet, but I feel like it gives you more pieces of the story that if you don't use it as a big part of your story, it gives it more depth at the very
Yeah.
least, and you can pull those elements in. Like Kristen got all sorts of stuff for Tenna, and she's like, okay, now here's how I'm gonna pull this, this, and this, and this, and she's telling me about it, and like it's cool, I think it's cool, and I think that there are DMs out there that discount the wild card that is your players and look at it as a detriment rather than a help, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Those
I think
GMs can just go write a novel
yeah,
because that's what they want.
yeah. I actually almost got into a chat argument with one of my friends because he was talking about how he was in a group and the DM kind of just basically wanted to be like a play. Like he had everything scripted out. And I'm like, he's like, I don't like that at all. And I don't like people that do that in their games. And I'm like, okay, hold up, bro. Because he works in film, so he doesn't care
Oh
for
yeah.
cinematic stuff. And I'm like, look, I know people, and I know that on our channel we want to have a few games where it's very deeply RP, where we don't have our side tangents like we usually do, or it's very much we try to just actually play the character. We may not roll dice as much as other games, it may be more of an RP with a little bit of dice rolling. And I'm like, some people like that, and some people tune in for that. Some people would
Mm-hmm.
rather have that than the games where you sit down, you watch the game, and it's fun. And sometimes it's kind of like sitting at your friend's table because you have those little moments where you're joking, and you have those asides. You know, some people don't want that. Some people don't care for it. He's like, okay, okay. He's like, I just had a bad experience where they're trying to force it on me. I'm like, okay, that's different. And there are some games like that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Kristen was listening to a podcast where, and this was before she started this, and before she was DMing and stuff. I think it was before COVID, and she was sitting out here at the kitchen table listening to it, and I was getting more and more pissed at these people because they were bitching about players that didn't do what they wanted them to. Like they don't listen, they don't want do what I want them to, and I have this whole story written out. And they're going over here and humping the goat in the pen instead, and it's like, well, turn the goat into a mimic. Do something to drive them back to the story. It's your world. We had this conversation early on, because Krista was still learning to DM and write her stories and get people to play. And I'm like, you gotta let them fuck the goat and find out that goat's gonna bite their dick off to roll to send them
the
right
goat,
back.
the goat has not given you consent.
No, the goat's saying no. The, you gotta send them back to the story. But ultimately,
Yeah.
it's also your fucking world. You are God, so to speak. So you can kind of like they never have to know that that's not where you want to go. You can just turn the story that way and then turn it back. The the
Hmm.
the treasure that was going to be over here, just move a few feet over this way. They don't have to know.
Yeah.
You know,
Schrodinger's
Schrodinger's goat.
Schrodinger's dungeon or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
here's four options. They're all the same option,
Yeah.
right?
Even
Like they all.
option even option number 5 that wasn't on the list, it's the same
Yeah, it's the
option.
same. You do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's like how I look at like when I'm like thinking over these other things I want to run. The game that when I was facing my first one, it's like they're gonna sometimes pick the option that I don't want them to pick. So just make them all the same option somehow. You know,
Hmm.
I feel like to me it's just, and I don't know if it's because I've seen so many DMs try to force the game a certain way and get pissed when it doesn't, or have the same conversation with people over the years that you have to allow for the human element. I don't know kind of where it came into the mindset of just being ready to roll with it with this stuff. And it may be like what I do for work, because we
Hmm.
got to be ready to roll with it. It's healthcare, and I work in critical care. So
Yeah.
shit hits the fan every 5 seconds some days, you know?
Yeah. You
So
learn to think on your feet.
And I think that's, what it is you can't have everything super set in stone when you're in a scenario where there are real people making decisions that you have no control over in terms of like what their mind is going to connect with the dots and decide to do. You know, you can only present them with options and then manipulate those options as necessary to drive the story forward. So,
Yeah.
sometimes like I feel like just watching the games as they go and I know how Kristen like sometimes flies by the seat of her pants, and clearly you do too sometimes with just the stuff you pull out of your ass.
Sometimes, all the time.
I was trying to be nice,
No, hey, it's all right. I
but
fully admit.
sometimes I feel like, that trick with the handkerchief in the hat is I think, you're pulling it out as you go, but
Yeah.
I feel like the gaming, like you have your base storyline that you want them to make it through, but you kind of have to just pull the things out of the hat as go. Oh, look, we've
Yeah.
got the red handkerchief today. That's what we're doing. Oh, nope, there's a blue one. Shit. Okay, we're doing this now. That's how I look at a lot of things. Is okay. Well, we're doing this thing now, and I feel like if you're not you get it too set in stone and don't allow for that fluidity, you can't build your story. You
Yeah.
kind of nerf your own story by being so mad that they're not following the story when really you can just manipulate the story, you know?
Well, and I think too, like I know for me, like right, like I'm really kind of a improv. Like lately, I'm super much an improv guy, but realistically, that's not entirely true because I do a lot of foundational work,
Mhm.
beforehand, or all I do all day is think about D&D or whatever. So, but so like I have all these constructs, all these foundations set, and I kind of have an idea. So, when players interact with a thing that I've set up, awesome, it's good to go. When the players do this thing, a lot of the trappings of the scene are set, but it's all of the expression is kind of you know made up on the spot. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Because anytime I prep something or whatever too much, we never touch it. Like nobody. We don't. Oh, I did all this stuff for going left,
Yeah.
and I also did so much stuff for going right that they are very two specific different things. So if you go straight, fuck. you
Well,
know.
then
But
we go
now it's
straight.
like
Maybe
I've
just take
got
a
all
little bit
these.
from either side.
Right. Well, yeah, like I said, you know, now I get all these good building blocks. Like I have a good set of building blocks in place that I can go and do the things that I need to, that the players care about and that is interesting for them.
Yeah, I look at like a modular thing. That's I think
Yeah.
that the way you talk about with blocks, I think is like I have this piece here and this piece here and this piece here, and they're going to eventually come together up here. How they pull them together along the way, because everybody puts together a puzzle differently.
Hmm.
You give me a 200-piece puzzle and you and I sit down and look at it, you're going to look at it from a different angle than I am to put it all together. So you just have all the pieces. You just start putting the pieces out there, and then remember that every option is still this option,
Yeah.
and they'll pick them up
Yeah.
eventually. They may still fuck the goat
And you never know.
though. No,
You
there's
never
always
can
one
tell
part.
when somebody is either a goat fucker or a sheep shagger, right?
You know,
You never know.
there's always one. Always one.
There's always one in 5 people
You get
are
you
goat
get
fuckers.
you get 5 players in a setting. There's always going to be one player that just wants to play a game of kill it or fuck it.
It's
That's it.
murder, death, kill.
Yeah,
Wait,
basically.
Mary. Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah, I love it.
It really is. And sometimes I'm that character. Some of my characters are like, can I kill it? Nope. Can I fuck it? Nope. Okay, I don't want it. Bye.
But can I fuck?
It's sometimes it's one or the other. Some characters are that black
Yeah.
and white.
Mm. I would like to wrap it up.
Okay. It's probably much later there for you than it is me. It's only 8 here.
Yeah, it's after 10,
Oh shit.
and I would. Yeah, that's fine. It's not. No worries. But
No, we
I would
usually
like
go
to.
for-
I would like to go to bed.
No, it's fine. We usually go for an hour, and we had tech issues, so
Yeah,
but then we just got going, and suddenly it was like.
and we still went for over an hour.
Just a little late. Yes, just a little late. Yeah, don't
Yeah.
talk shit to my internet provider. They're the problem.
Fucking internet.
It works now. So now we know we have it working. So tomorrow when we go to air your
Yeah.
show, it should be fine.
Yeah.
That's what matters, right?
Exactly. I mean, no, but thank you for thinking that.
Well, your show's up next.
I know,
tomorrow,
but then
so-
my show isn't what matters.
I mean, it did to me because I'm sitting here. Oh shit! If it doesn't work now, is it gonna work tomorrow?
That's fair. I do enjoy my show, and I get to play with really fun people.
You have a good crew. They're fun.
They're
We're very
amazing.
lucky. We have like a score of amazing cast members. Like we have, other than Kristen and I, we have 17 people that play or run games on this channel. So we have amazing cast. Like everybody's super cool.
That's a lot. Yeah.
It is. It's insane. Like all of these characters and all of these worlds. That's why like building all of these stories and like just watching them all come together is so cool to me because I am a very story driven person. So it's cool to me seeing all of these come together with all these different personalities, all these different characters people are creating. It's fascinating to me. Like it's really neat.
Is anybody in more than 2 games, not counting Kristen as DM?
No,
Allison's in 2 games.
Allison's in 2, and that's it.
That's
only in
it.
1.
Yeah.
Yeah, Allison.
Allison, Allison is a boss.
Yeah, she's fucking. She's
Oh,
like,
she
I've
is
seen her-
fantastic.
I've seen her a little bit on Exquisite Corpse too. So
Oh. Allison, if you're watching, and I know you're not because I can see who's in chat. But if you watch this later, I think you're fantastic. And thank you for being my player.
yeah, she's awesome. I got to play with her. She played in the second half of one of her Viking Death Squad one shots, and that was a lot of fun. She's cool.
Yeah.
I really like her. So, we have a lot of amazing players. Like we're very fortunate. So, and they all bring all sorts of cool stuff to the table and have come up with some really bitchin' characters. So,
Yeah, now if only Michael would fucking get back. Come back, Michael.
is he out again this
He's
week?
got Billy. He's going to see Billy Joel tomorrow.
Oh, that's
So
right. I saw Billy Joel in 1989.
totally different show too.
It was the Stormfront tour.
Nice. Oh, that's so rad.
That's like the tour
Yeah.
of like when is like his big heyday, like
Yeah.
like during the 80s. So that was the one with the We Didn't Start the Fire and all that shit. So
Good time. Man, memories. 1989.
yeah,
What a weird year that was.
I was 12.
I was
Shut up, Skag. I know
I
you're
was
you're like 12.
1989. I think I was 12 too. Are we the same age? When
Yeah,
were you born?
77.
I was 77. You're a year older than me. I was born in 78.
Oh yeah, but your birthday's in October.
My birthday is also October.
Okay, so I'm a year older than you.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And your birthday is the 23rd?
7th.
No, 7th. Okay, mine's the 22nd. So put that as factoids for all you on the internet.
Yeah,
The same birthday as Toby Mac from that fantastic Christian rap band DC Talk.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I forgot they
My wife
existed.
was 2 years old in 1989.
Oh, cradle rubber.
That's right.
No, yeah,
Skag was born in 93. Good Lord, man.
yeah, I was a sophomore in high school. Yeah, I'm old. So yes, my birthday is October 7th. For anybody that wants to buy me
Yeah.
this year, it is the big 45. So I'm halfway to like I don't know an AARP membership or some bullshit. I'm not sure. So yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah.
Buy me things or don't. It doesn't really matter to me.
No, you buy her things. I'm looking at you, nameless internet viewer, buy her things. But nothing weird and creepy.
Yeah.
Unless she gives you permission.
Yeah, the creepy shit needs consent. I mean,
Consent.
I mean taxidermy. I like taxidermy. That's creepy. Bones. If you want to send me like ethically sourced bones, I like
Define ethically.
like you didn't like snatch someone's pet and murder it for my birthday. You know, that's gross.
I mean, what if it was old? Is that murder?
Yes, it's still murder. You asshole.
Are old people?
I'm fucking old, so yes, I'm a person. I think.
My
Yeah.
wife says consent bones.
Grave robbing bones. I mean, I'm not gonna like necessarily ask, but I mean, if you get arrested, that's on you if you go grave robbing.
That's, yeah, right. Yeah, no grave robbing. Yeah, well, yeah, I think we should go. Everyone out there in the internet, thank you for hanging out with us. I want to go to bed.
All right.
Actually, I'm going to finish this beer and then go to bed.
Well, why don't you tell everybody what you're doing?
Yeah.
I'll find you.
Hey, if you don't know, for some odd reason, my name's Chad. You can find me on Twitch as NorthstarDM. You can find me on Twitter as RealCMG. I've probably got an Instagram that I have, but it's Instagram, so it's weird, and I don't understand it because I'm fucking old.
Okay, I understand.
But if you like,
no excuse.
if you like pictures of animals, my My animals only page is non-human friends with 2 O's. Um, but yeah, I run at the threshold my D&D 5e game based on Sly Flourish's Patreon exclusive release, The City of Arches. And it's fantastic. Kat here is going to guest appear at some point. And I'm excited for that because I want to play with Kat. And that's pretty much all. I'll be vague and say that I've got some awesome news that will come out sometime in the next, I don't know, 2 months maybe, about cool stuff I've got going on. That I'm not going to talk
first.
That I'm not going to really talk about yet. But some people know it. But yeah, that's all I'm doing right now. Hopefully playing in some other games at some point. I'm not actually playing any games right now. I'm just running, which is super fucking weird.
Got some stuff coming up in October.
I know. I know. But yeah, Kat, who are you and where can we find you? And what are you doing?
I'm Kat, and you can find me as Autumnox on Twitter. I have a neglected Instagram, and that's about it for my social media for streaming. You can find me on Fridays for our Cyberpunk game at 7 p.m. All of our times are on Pacific as Obscura, the Netrunner. And then swinging into next week, Monday, we'll be back with Artena at 5 p.m. That's Kristen's game, one of her D&D 5e games that she is running. Tuesday, we have at 1 p.m. Watercolor Wizardry with Maria. She does all of this amazing art on screen. It is our personal happy little painter. She does awesome art. If you watch Artena or her game at 4:30 on Tuesday, Misguided Magic, you can see a ton of her character art that she's done. It is so awesome. And then Wednesday, we'll be back at 6 p.m., hopefully without the tech issues, for Chaos Commentary, which I think you're supposed to guest next week, I think is what we had on deck.
Am I? Sweet. I'll do it.
So. I think you were the first in our list. We have a list of guests. Either way, right. We'll figure it out.
If that's the case, I'll do it. If not, I'll do it if you need me.
I'm pretty sure it's what Kristen and I talked about, and I think we mentioned it, but that was like, I don't know. I haven't really slept since then, so I can't really tell you because that was a while ago. But yeah, that is what we've got going, and then we'll see you tomorrow. So thanks for coming out and talking to us.
Thank you.
Bye.
I love you.